Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's program. I'm Erin Crane. I'm the Adult Services Department Head and Assistant Branch Manager for the Fredericksburg branch of the Central Rappahannock Regional Library. As always, I'm very pleased to be joined by Lamont Brown, who is the Principal Advisor and at Alna Wealth Management here in Fredericksburg. Lamont is here to talk to us today about investments and taxes and income. So, Lamont, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. I'm stoked about this one. Let me get started. It was ninth grade, and I fell in love. Not that kind of love, but I fell in love because before I'd been playing checkers, and that was a great game. I enjoyed the competitive side of it, jumping and doing all those things. But in ninth grade, in the library, I found chess and my mind was blown. It was the point where I saw everything. You had all these different moves, all these rules. The pawn could move one square or two squares, depending on it was the same board, but now the amount of patterns and the number of rules had just went exponential. So we take the same 64 pieces and now we turn in what they call the game of kings or chess. Next slide. It was at that point that I realized that rules and the pieces and patterns all mattered. And that's what we're going to talk about today because when you get to retirement, it's now shifting from the simple strategies of putting money away and watching it grow to all these rules and all these pieces and all these patterns that you have to align and work together because now in retirement, everything is important. So today we're going to first learn what are the pieces that are on the board, and then we're going to talk about how they interact, some of the common patterns, and then I'm going to leave you with some questions that you can take to your financial professional or you can ask today. So, throughout this conversation, at any point, if you have a question or something that you want to discuss directly, please don't hesitate. I'm here to answer those questions. So, let's get started with knowing the pieces. Just like I was when I first saw chess, I was like amazed. You got the pawns that move one square or two square, and they can capture only diagonally. And there's this thing called en passant, where there's this weird rule where if you pass a pawn, you could take the pawn. It was the weirdest thing. You have the knight that moved in these weird angles, and they also could jump over pieces to capture pieces. You got bishops going at diagonals. You got rooks going straight and back. And you have the queen, which is great because she can move any direction she wants to. Then you have the king, which can move it any direction he wants to, but he can only do it one square at a time. But you have to coordinate all of these things. Just like I know those pieces, today we're going to talk about the pieces you need to know as you start to put together your plan because all these dots connect and all of them have to be working together because things you do in one can impact the things you do things that happen in the other. Next slide. Let's talk about the first piece, and this is the most important piece because going into retirement, the most important part of retirement is income. Am I going to have enough is the first question most people ask. Where is it going to come from is the next question people are going to ask. And the third question is normally, what is going to be the tax impact of me having this income? And so that is the proper order. So you want to be thinking about those things. The first type of income we want to talk about is earned income. This is the one that we're all very comfortable and understanding. This is the one that if you take this into retirement, it is the one where you actually go out and do something to get it to come in. This is working a job, either part time or full time. This is where your wages come from. We understand this, we know this pretty backwards and forwards. But then we start thinking about the unearned income, which does happen when you go into retirement. So there's things like Social Security. And I have highlighted the ones that have a difference in taxes. So as you can see, three of those, they all get treated differently tax wise. So Social Security, we know that could either start at 62 early or you can start at full retirement depending on your age, either 66 in some months or 67 plus. And then you have you can wait until age 70. All of those have an impact on how much you receive. but they don't have they can also have an impact on how much you're going to be taxed on that Social Security, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Then you have annuity income. Depending on where the annuity is it a qualified annuity or is it a non-qualified annuity? The taxes are going to come out differently depending on that answer. Then you have interest income, which is your traditional bank income, like the boring stuff you get from your savings account. That is interest income. Then you have rental income. We all like that. That's when you're renting your house out or you're renting out a home for specific income. Then you have dividends. Dividends could either come to you either as qualified dividends or just normal dividends. And each one of them are taxed a little bit differently. And you want to know that. And then finally, you have capital gains, either short term capital gains or long term capital gains, which has a different tax treatment. These are all the income pieces that are on the board as you start to put together your chessboard and prepare for the future. Each one of them comes with different tax treatments, and each one of them comes from different places. When you're not retired, you generally are only receiving earned income, and most of us understand that. But when you get retired, you start receiving things from either annuities or Social Security. Capital gains becomes different, not different, but it normally comes about at that point. So you want to be thinking about all of these things as you start to build out your chess pieces. Next slide. From there, we shift into investments. And I just broke it down simply just because it keeps it easy. But this is simple. These are the basic accounts that you're going to have. They're going to go into one or two buckets, either retirement investments or non retirement investments. This is pretty straightforward. Retirement investments get preferred treatment because you are deferring taxes on that pre tax money. So I put money in from my wages. I'm deferring taxes. It grows over time. And then I have these special rules on when I can take it out. If I wait until after 59 and a half, there's no 10% penalty. So I'm taking those funds out without any penalties. But the tax treatment is going to be like ordinary income, which we'll get more specific into that. It gets treated completely different than the Roth below. Roth below does not reduce your taxes when you're putting it away, but it does grow tax deferred. But then when it comes out completely tax free if you wait past 59 and a half and you kept it in there for at least 5 years. So all of those things are considerations as you start to plan out your chessboard. So as you can see, the amount of rules goes up through the roof as soon as you get into that conversation about retirement. And that's what we continue to think about. Now, considering non-retirement, you either have real estate or investment accounts. That's the basic. There are other non-retirement accounts that we can talk about, but outside the scope of this, I want to really focus on this one. So real estate is your current residence, or it could be rental residence. So those are different investments that you have, and they're going to get treated one way or the other, depending on how you've bought that property or how you're going to sell that property. Then you have, and if you're receiving rental income or all those things, then you have investment accounts. This one gets treated completely different than the pre-tax or Roth IRA. Because what happens is when you buy something, say I go out and I buy a stock and I hold that stock for over 12 months. That's important because if you hold it for over 12 months, what you've now pushed yourself into is what we call the long-term capital gains situation. So now if I sell that stock after holding it for over 12 months, then what's going to happen is the tax treatment is going to be completely different than if I bought and sold it within 8 months. So you want to know those rules as you start to plan out your chessboard. All of those rules combine and create how the rest of this is going to work. And so you have your income, you have your investments, and then I've kind of alluded to this. We talk about taxes. Next, please. Taxes comes in ordinary or capital gains. Ordinary income tax, It's just like is your normal tax brackets. Those normal tax brackets start out at the 10% and they go up from there. This is the one you're most common, is most common. So this is where your wages hit. So whenever you get your wages, you go to your CPA or your tax professional and they look at how much your taxable income is and they give you this number and you have to figure out what you're going to pay and all those things. That is ordinary income. Then you have Social Security. Well, Social Security has special treatments because not we all know since the last couple times we talked, Social Security is taxed differently. It is taxed either at the 0% if your Social Security, if your total wages are at a certain point, it's either taxed at the 50% or it's taxed at a max of 85%. But those are all then put through the ordinary income tax brackets. So you want to think about that. You have annuity income, which is taxed as ordinary income. You have interest income is taxed as ordinary income. You have rental income. And then finally, you have dividends, which is treated differently. It has a different tax approach to it. And so you have qualified and non-qualified dividends, and each one of those are treated differently tax-wise. And then finally, we have capital gains. Capital gains is 0, 15, or 20. And they get taxed all differently based on how long you held it and what your taxable income is going to be. So all of these are the pieces of the chessboard that is retirement planning. So we have our income, we have our investments, and we have our taxes. And you could see how each one of these interplays together to create that whole. Because if your income is high, then your capital gains tax rate could go up. If your wages are higher, then your capital gains tax rate can go up. If you have dividends that you have for certain types of positions and you held it for over a certain period of time, those could actually go down. So you want to be thinking about all of these things as you pull together the pieces of the puzzle. Now we're going to shift gears and go into some common patterns. These are common patterns that I get asked about all the time. So I wanted to see if I could illustrate them so you can see graphically what is actually happening so you can make better decisions. Because I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. They said that once before, I think, to me. So I want to make sure we give you that picture so you can take a look at it. Let's talk about the first pattern. Retirement withdrawals. This one eludes a lot of people because a lot of us have the notion that we're going to take money out of our 401k when we retire and it's not going to be fully taxed. It is going to be fully taxed. And you want to see what that looks like. So what I have on the left is a before withdrawal taxes. So this person is trucking along. They're taking just Social Security. They have not taken any money out of their 401k. And we know that their Social Security is either taxed at 0, 50, or 85%. So this is the 0, 50, or 85% that is taxable to their Social Security. Then they go out and they say, I want to go out and I want to take $100,000 or $50,000 out of my IRA, traditional IRA, or my pre-tax 401k contributions. And look what it does. It stacks right on top. And now their taxable income has been increased by that amount that they've just taken out. So now they could have even pushed themselves into a different tax bracket, or now they've increased the amount of taxes that they could potentially have to pay. So you want to take a look at each one of those decisions when you're taking money out of a 401k or pre-tax to do things with in retirement. You want to understand what is going to be the impact of me taking this money out. If I take out $1 more, will that push me into a higher tax bracket? Will that cause other impacts along the way? So this is the basic conversation you need to have. And this is the first one. Let's talk about the second pattern next. They increase their investment income. So they're trucking along, same person. They have income from either working or not working. They have income coming into their house. That's either work income or working part-time. They have Social Security income, and all that's going fine. And then all of a sudden, they get those capital gains at the end of the year, or they get an additional dividend or something like that, and their investments start throwing off income. They can have rental income. All these things are going to increase their taxable income. So as you can see, investment income also can impact your taxable income. So think about this. You have a savings account that's going to collect interest, and at the end of the year you get this interest payment, and now you're going to have to pay extra in taxes. You have dividends that are being thrown off by your dividend investments. That's going to increase your taxable income. You have things like capital gains. Sometimes mutual funds, if they're in a non-retirement account, they can throw off capital gains towards the end of the year that is going to increase your investment income and give you that increase in your taxable income. So all of those things are playing into this pattern. So you want to be looking for investment income. You want to be looking for what's going to change over the course of the year. So now we've done that one. Let's talk about some of the things that most people are really considering now. I get more questions about this on a daily basis, and most people don't really understand what's happening. So think of it from this perspective. You have this pre-tax bucket of money that's either in a Roth IRA or in a pre-tax 401k, and you decide you want to do Roth conversions. Well, you go out, you decide to convert money from your pre-tax to Roth. Now, you know you're going to have to wait 5 years after that conversion is done so you can take it out tax-free, but you're really doing it to avoid later on required minimum distributions and all those things. But look what happened to that income. It's going to be counted as income when you make that conversion. Now, there's no penalties associated with this as long as you annotate that it's a Roth conversion, but you are going to pay taxes, and it's going to be looked at as ordinary income. So now your income has increased, and now your taxable income has increased. So as you can see, then the decisions you make with your investments is now impacting your tax, it is impacting your income, which is therefore impacting your income. So all these things are playing in. And one of the things you got to consider when you're making those decisions is what's going to be the impact on my investments? What's going to be the impact on my taxes? What's going to be the impact on my income? All those things tie together. Next, final pattern, deferred taxes. This one is interesting. I'm going to tell you why. Because most of us have been taught that every year we need to put as much as we can into our 401k and defer, because that reduces our income and that gives us money for later on that we can use. Well, there's a catch. There can be a catch. It's going to be positive or negative. You have to decide for yourself. But deferring income, it increases your pre-tax amount of money. Well, if you don't need the money, then later on, when you get to either 73, 74, 75, and you start having to take that money out due to required minimum distributions, that required minimum distribution is going to come back because you have all this deferred income. It's going to be calculated based on how much you have in that pre-tax bucket of money. Well, it doesn't come to you tax-free. It comes as ordinary. It gets taxed the same as ordinary income, and it stacks on top of whatever income you currently have coming in. And at that point, it's Social Security, it could be pensions and all those things. So that deferred income is going to come back as a tax later on, because now you're going to have to take out money potentially you didn't want to take out or didn't even need to take out. So you want to be considering where you're putting your money now, because later on you're going to have to figure out how to get it out, either through Roth conversions, or you're going to have to take it out via distributions, or you're going to have to take it out via required minimum distributions. All of this plays together, and these are the dots that you have to start connecting when you're making these decisions about your overall financial situation. First, you got to know the pieces, and then you got to start seeing the patterns. What's going to happen to my income? What impact is that going to have on my taxes? And what is my final investment going to look like when I'm all said and done? Because all this isn't made in a vacuum. They all connect, and you want to know how they connect so that you can make the best possible decision. Oftentimes, we understand one part of the puzzle, but don't understand the other parts. But you need to understand that this is all interconnected and these all kind of ride together. Now, we're going to get to the questions I think that you should be asking yourself or your financial professional or anyone in your friend group to get the right answers about for yourself. Next, first question is, how will whatever impact income, taxes, and investments? You want to ask it in that order. First, you want to know, is this going to create any income? Because the income you create is either going to be taxed in a normal way or it's going to be taxed in a preferential way. That's the first question. And then you want to ask, what does this leave as far as my investments go for later on? Am I creating a problem because now my allocation is shifted to more risky versus less? All those things are questions that you need to be asking yourself when you're making these decisions. From there, how will Social Security timing impact your other income? So, taking Social Security early, if you were considering Roth conversions, that could have a big impact because now you have to consider your Social Security income when you're doing those Roth conversions. So, pushing Social Security to later may give you an extra room to make those conversions happen at a much lower tax bracket. So, you want to be thinking about, when am I taking Social Security and what is going to be the impact on the things I want to do? How should I fund the first years of retirement? Depends. If you're still working, you should fund it as tax efficiently as possible. So you want to be thinking about those things. I had a quick thought about a client recently talked about, and it just, first thing they said, well, how should I fund this? And we, first thing we went to is, what's going to be the tax impact? Where's the income going to hit? You want to be thinking about those things as soon as you can so that you can make the best decisions. And should I pay taxes earlier to reduce taxes overall? So taxes are going to be paid. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We've talked about this. When you put money in pre-tax, yeah, you're deferring it, but you're going to pay taxes later. So do you pay those taxes now and just bite the bullet and then wait it and then allow the money to go tax deferred and then come out completely tax free later on? Or do you defer the taxes until a later lower income tax bracket and then you do conversions? All of that is a big conversation that you should be having before you reach retirement. Now, how would a home sale, a conversion change the whole board? So you sell a home, there's going to be a taxes associated with it. Now, you do get to exclude a certain amount depending on whether you're married or not, but you want to be thinking about this. Is it a rental home? Or is it a personal home? Is it your personal property that you lived in for a few years? So you want to be thinking about all those things. Then how is that Roth conversion going to impact everything else? Because every time you convert a dollar, you're going to pay tax on that dollar. Is that going to impact your Social Security taxability? Is that going to impact your Medicare, IRMA thresholds? All of those things have to come into consideration as you make these decisions. So as you can see, switching from chess to checkers didn't make life easier, but it added a lot more rules and it added a lot more interest and it added a lot of more complexity, but it's not something you can't work through or can't figure out. These are all things that if you know the board and you know the pieces, you could easily figure out. I'm looking forward to hearing questions, and at this point, I'll open it up to that.
Wow, Lamont, thank you so much. I think, honestly, the chess and the checkers analogy was kind of brilliant because a lot of people play board games, and
Yeah.
there are rules to the games, and once you figure them out, they are so much easier
Yeah.
than just going about it blindly.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, the same 64 squares. I mean, and it changes completely. And you got to think about tying things together and protecting things. It just all works. And I like to look at it that way. It makes things simple for me, and hopefully the graphics work for everyone because I like to show people, how does it look? What does it look like at the end of the day?
I think it was great. I also really enjoyed how you separated the colors of the different tax things because I think sometimes people get really confused by that stuff. So I know I do, and I'm assuming people who are watching get confused by it as well. And having that opportunity to see it so clearly really does help make things nice and simple. simple. Because, you know, like you said, once you figure out the pieces, it's much easier to sort of navigate where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Wow, that's wonderful. If anybody does have any questions later, please contact Lamont. He's wonderful to work with, and we very much enjoy having him on each month to talk about how to basically create smart strategies for your retirement, because we all look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.